Before we dive into today's episode, we want to let you know that our conversation includes discussions of sensitive topics that may be triggering for some listeners. Please take caution and care while listening. Hello, Heal Squad. How is everyone doing? Today we are talking to someone whose story you may think you know, but really you've only seen fragments of it on the big screen. You know the hit Oscar-winning movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, where Leonardo DiCaprio crushed. Well, we are joined by Dr. Nadine Macaluso, who is the real life inspiration behind Naomi, who Margot Robbie so wonderfully played. At 22, Nadine married real-life wolf Jordan Belfort, but after leaving and surviving that volatile and very abusive marriage, Nadine went on to earn her master's and PhD in psychotherapy. Today, she helps people heal from trauma bonds and reclaim their lives. Her book, Run Like Hell, is a guide to escaping toxic love and finding true healing. And she's also sharing her journey surviving 2 cancers that shaped her approach to health and resilience. We're going to get into all of that. But first, our quote of the day: what we deny, we empower. But what we expose, we can finally heal. And that is from Dr. Nay. Let's get started. Today, I feel like you have obviously gone through so much, and I'm grateful that you're sharing, because that's the only way that we learn. Unfortunately, it's like we hear other people's stories, they inspire us, they kind of alert us sometimes to maybe things that we're not paying attention to. So first of all, thank you for that. Thank you for writing Run Like Hell. And I guess, like, for the Heal Squad and for, everyone who's listening that may not know your story, obviously, this book is kind of a gateway to people to kind of understanding what you've gone through. But you were married to the Wolf of Wall Street
Right.
and had a very, very challenging experience there. Would you just kind of give people a little bit of insight into what your life was really like? I mean, we saw a movie that has to
Yes.
be edited down to a very small amount of time.
Yes.
So I don't believe that that usually portrays people's real life stories properly. I don't know what your take is on that, obviously having to live through that.
Yeah. 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 I mean, listen, having a movie made about the most traumatic experience in your life is certainly challenging. Yet you and I wouldn't be talking here today, probably, if that didn't occur.
Yeah. Did
So,
you have to approve it?
no, what happened is my ex wrote a book called The Wolf of Wall Street. And so then they created that book and made it into a movie. So I didn't have to approve it, and really I had no say in it, which was challenging for me to manage myself, but I did. And one of the reasons why I became a therapist is because I've been in therapy since I met him. Because when I met him at 22, I was young, I was naive, I had no idea there were like pathological people in the world, right? I grew up with my mother in Brooklyn with a single mom, but I have a very charmed, quiet, drama-free life till I met him. And so then I met him, and as the movie depicts, it was fast and furious. And there was tons of love bombing. We fell madly in love, or at least what I thought was love. And we got engaged in 6 months, married 6 months later, because he was determined to make that happen. He actually threatened me to do that. And I just was like, oh, he loves me, so I should do it. And then before I knew it, I was pregnant and trapped with a person who was a severe drug addict and very abusive.
And a pathological liar, right?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So he had all of those traits of pathological people, right? He was very manipulative. He would coerce me. He'd say, if you don't get married, I'm not going to date you. And if you don't have children, I'm not going to marry you. So it was always what he wanted when he wanted it. And as a young girl, I had never come into contact with anybody like this. And I was so enamored by the money and all of his power and success because he's a self-made individual. But at that moment, about 6 months after I met him, I said, you know what? I think I better go to therapy.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing that you were that aware so quickly. I mean, listen, it's so hard when you're young. It really is, and it is so alluring and charming and all of those things to those traps are easy to fall into. But when you when you first met him, how much older was he than you?
So he wasn't that much older. I was 22, 23, and he was 28.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I was from Brooklyn. He was from Queens. We had a lot of, commonalities, and we connected on that. But, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Let's just say that. It
Yeah.
didn't end up like that. I ended up in a quintessential trauma bond, but back then, nobody was talking about trauma bonds, not even my therapist.
It's interesting because it takes a long time for things to come to surface. Like you said, trauma bonds weren't talked about then. I mean, you even talked about, I think it was pathological lovers
Yes.
here. I feel like you have so much to share. So you went into therapy 6 months after, and how long did it take you before you decided to exit this experience?
So I put
Because it
myself,
sounds like it was an
there
experience.
was an experience. So I put myself into therapy, and again, not knowing what narcissism was, trauma bonds, coercive control, but I just knew something was wrong. I didn't, I knew that it was not normal for someone to have so much control over me, to someone to have that much rage. But then again, like a trauma bond, it's mixed with extreme kindness and generosity and love. So anytime I would be like, that's it, I'm out, then that's the intermittent reinforcement, the love bombing, the generosity and the care come back. And I always say hope is the hook. So then I'd be like, oh, there's the guy I met. There he is. I see him again. And then I'd be back in it. And so that intermittent reinforcement, which is mixtures of kindness mixed with cruelty, happens for a very long time. And then over time, like most of these experiences, they escalate, they get worse. The drug addiction got worse, the abuse got worse. But I felt more and more trapped because now I'm moving to suburbia, I'm having babies. Uh, I don't know how I'm going to live if I leave him. And he was very threatening to me. And he said to me, the only way you're going to leave this marriage is in a body bag. And so, you know,
And
I
you have babies.
yeah, and I had babies, and I was just like, oh my God. And so that really left a very severe image in my brain. And so I would say, though, a few years in, I ended up being with him for 8 years. I would say 3, 4 years in, I was like, what the hell have I gotten myself into? And how the hell do I get out?
Yeah. What did your mom say?
My mom was amazing, and there were so many moments in my life. She died from cancer at a very young age due to smoking. But the first thing she did was when I told her I was going to get married, she took me to lunch, and she was English. And she said, my love, you do not have to do this. And I was like, but mom, I love him. And she also, in the movie, it depicts where he gets extremely violent with me. And my mom was so smart because when I was going home to the house before that happened, she told me to call the police and tell them I was going home to a domestic violence situation. So she saved me then. And then when he got arrested, she said to me, let's go see a lawyer because you never know, the FBI, you need protection. I sit down at the attorney. The attorney looks at me and says, so you want to get divorced, do you? And I looked at her, good one, mom. So she was always there to kind of save me and push me in the right direction.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, very bright woman.
How did you get through that type of just tornado and abuse every day and with little kids? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I think luckily for me, like I said, I was raised by a very strong mother, and she taught me about psychology my whole entire life, hence why I'm a therapist.
Wow.
And so I always had a good enough sense of self because that was really imbued into me from her, from a very young age, through all of my development. And I had friends and I had my family, I had my therapy, and always throughout my marriage, I was learning. I went to school to learn how to cook. I went to school to learn about wine. I went to interior design school. In fact, he makes fun of me in his book about that. So I was still and I learned how to horseback ride actually. So I was still always working on myself in the midst of all the madness. And I think that kept me anchored in me and allowed me to escape and save myself eventually.
Wow. After all this work that you've done on yourself, is there anything that makes you feel like made you more kind of susceptible to entering this
Yeah.
marriage with him? Because obviously your age
Yes.
is more than enough, but
Right. Yeah, so in my book, I talk about some research that was done with Sandra Brown in this fabulous book she wrote, Women Who Love Psychopaths. And in 2019, I read this book and it rocked my world because what she did is she did research not just with women that were in domestic violence shelters, but women that were judges, lawyers, teachers, professionals. And she found that women actually who end up in these situations, some, of course, they had early developmental trauma. This sort of love feels familiar. But that was
mm,
really not my case. So there's a personality assessment that everyone can take, and it's called the five-factor model of personality. And it measures traits such as agreeableness, conscientiousness, extroversion, neuroticism, and openness to experience. And she said that women that score very high to high in agreeableness and conscientiousness end up in these trauma bonds. It makes sense. If you're agreeable, you're loyal, you're tolerant, you're empathetic. And if you're conscientious like me, hence why I got my PhD, right? I'm driven, I'm organized, I have integrity. And these are all beautiful qualities, but what happens in a trauma bond, they get weaponized against you. Now, you and I are in a friendship, and you have them and I have them, they're great,
yeah.
but
But
not in the hands of a pathological person.
wow. I
Yeah.
I feel like we need to hear more about this. I feel like there's so many women that are probably connecting with this on so many levels because I know for myself, I'm a super loyal person. I'm super
Yeah.
empathetic. I have all of those qualities that you just mentioned where I'm like,
Yes.
wow.
Yeah, so every woman who comes to work with me, I give them the assessment. I can send it to you. Happy to do that. And I test their attachment patterns and their history of developmental trauma. Because one of the reasons I wrote my book is to take the stigma away from the victim, right? Well, why did she stay? She has learned helplessness. She's codependent. She's a love addict. No, honestly, she just fell in love with a pathological person, did everything to try to make it work, and then it failed. And that's really the reality. And that doesn't mean that I didn't have my part in it. That doesn't mean I'm perfect. But there's a difference between a pathological person and a high functioning neurotic, such as myself.
Okay, so what's a high functioning neurotic? I've never heard of that.
A high functioning neurotic is a person that, has a conscience, has a moral compass to return to, right? But, maybe is a people pleaser, maybe is avoidant, has basic defenses that we all have in life to survive life that allowed us to adapt and survive. But we're not, see, this is what I say a pathological person is. They will use, harm, exploit, and betray you to get their needs met for money, power, pleasure, and status. That's not my motivation.
Mm.
It's not how I motivate in life. But I do get anxiety. I do feel grief. I do sometimes feel frozen, right? but I'm reflective and I can work past those things. Pathological people are not reflective and they can't have insight. That's hence why they don't change.
Ooh, you said a word that I've been hearing a lot lately, and it's adaptive. Will you
Yes.
talk about that? Because I know you know a lot about that.
Yeah, so when we're younger and we're growing up in our family of origin, nobody I've met has had perfect parents, myself included. My children are 30 and 32. My daughter's a therapist. They're both in therapy, okay? People get neglected, people get abused. Parents have their own imperfections. And what happens when you grow up in that family of origin system, you have to figure out adaptive behaviors to survive that system.
Mm-hmm.
They end up becoming too rigid and out of balance as adults, and then we have to undo them because we don't need them anymore. But in childhood, they are adaptive and allowed us to survive.
Wow. Yeah, I wonder what that unwinding is like because I know for myself, I had to adapt to some severe kind of stuff growing up. Um, and unwinding that is hard.
It's hard. Yeah, and that's where therapy comes in, right? So you go to therapy and you sit with the therapist. And the therapist says, you know what? I noticed that you have a really hard time saying no. You have a really hard time tolerating disappointing others, but then you resent them and it really affects your relationship. So that must have been something that you developed as a child, right? And so I'll work with them on tolerating disappointing others,
Mm,
with them on pausing before just defaulting to yes, 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 I can do it, to pausing, checking in with their authentic self. I don't want to do that. Let me take a risk. Let me say no. They say no. They realize the world doesn't collapse,
yep.
right? And so that's how we unwind out of certain adaptive survival styles that we've enlisted because we had to when we were younger.
Yeah. Yeah, that and compartmentalizing.
Oh, yeah. Yes, compartmentalizing, compartmentalizing. Again, it's adaptive. It works. But it gets very rigid and out of balance, and it doesn't work in our adulthood, and we don't need it.
Yeah. What made you want to write this book?
What made me want to write this book was that I had a private practice in Manhattan Beach, California. So I lived in California for 24 years. Now I'm back on the East Coast. And it's a wealthy area. And all these women, these bright, smart, beautiful, kind, amazing women were coming in coerced. And coercion simply means being pressured, right, to do what they didn't want to do. They were being betrayed by their partners, cheating on them. They were being lied to. They were being verbally and emotionally abused, some slightly physically abused. And I just said to myself, are we in the 1950s? What's happening here? And being the true academic that I am, I went back to the research and I wanted to learn about trauma bonds, coercive control, pathological people, how to escape one, and most importantly, then how to heal. And I wanted to really write the roadmap that I wish I had
Mm,
25 years ago when I was like in the woods. Nobody was talking about this.
yeah. So, what is coercive control?
So here's the thing, Maria. We used to think about domestic violence as one physical single incident, right? You got hit, or you got your hair pulled, or something like that, and then the police came. But what happens is that it's not like that anymore because in the 1970s, they made domestic violence, you got arrested for it. It was criminal. So these pathological people got stronger and smarter. And so what happens is that in a trauma bond, what makes it toxic is that the pathological person wants to have power and control over you. So they do it through methods of coercive control, belittlement, disparaging, micromanaging, pressuring you to do things you don't want, threatening you, intimidating you, dominating you. So these are all mechanisms of coercion and they're invisible. Nobody else sees them, but you feel
Ah, wow. So then you look like you're the crazy person.
exactly.
Yeah. He's
You
so amazing. What do you mean?
exactly, exactly. And
Ah,
most narcissists are very into their image, right? And I don't just use the word narcissist, it's just a piece of pathology. So they act wonderful a lot of times to the world, but then behind closed doors, all of this coercive control is happening. And so, actually, what's nice is that coercive control is getting recognized in the family court systems. And I think we're up to 8 states now.
no way.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Somebody can be prosecuted for this?
Yeah, so it's not it's criminalized actually in Great Britain, which is wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah, but in 8 states in family court, you can be, accused of it and convicted of it. It's not criminalized yet, but it really affects the family court case because they see the partner as a victim of coercive control.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really big movement. It's really important.
I've never heard that before. Because also you hear, so often that, I mean, courts don't care about anything anymore. It's like even in divorces, it's like they don't care if there's infidelity, they don't care about anything, but coercive control is something that's recognized. That's
Yeah, they're
very
recognizing
interesting.
it because it's a systematic pattern of breaking a person down, making them lose themselves. Because if you think about it, it's a great way to have total control over your partner.
Hmm.
And so it's very effective and it's invisible. There's a wonderful book by Lisa Fontes called Invisible Chains, and it was written in 2013, but it's an excellent book for anybody who really wants to dig deep into that. Very easy to read. And yeah, and I didn't know that that was happening to me because my ex was like, you don't need to work, right? I don't like that friend of yours, don't wear that color lipstick. And I didn't know there was a term for it.
Wow. So if you went back, or if you knew now or you knew then what you know now, what would you have done differently?
Well, I wouldn't have accepted that 5 carat emerald diamond because when he asked me to get married in Brooklyn and I said yes, my gut said, uh-oh. My gut knew. The body knew.
Okay, I want to break that down
Yeah.
because I feel like that is one of the most important things we need
Yes.
to really get solid with as women, and
Yeah.
nobody knows really how to do it. So I'm always sharing with people that it's almost like you were talking about before. It's say no, see that the world doesn't end, and build off that. Like keep
Yes.
feeling that reward,
Yes.
right? So
Correct.
you're setting a boundary, it worked, feel that reward. But the gut is the same thing.
Mhm.
But I think the problem is we only start to trust it as we get older and we've been burned and burned and burned and burned and burned. How do we teach young people to listen to that gut and to trust themselves?
Yeah, well, I think a great way to do it is to explain that it's science, okay? So we have something called the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve, right? You know about it, that comes out of the back of your head over here, and it runs down the front of your body and it runs into your viscera, right? So it runs into your gut. And what happens is it's sensing the world and always telling you safety or danger,
Hmm.
right? So, in that instance with my ex, right, my gut was telling me danger, and it was science. I didn't know that then. I was just like, oh, what is that? But
Hmm.
it's science. I mean, our nervous systems, our bodies are built to survive. And my vagus nerve and my nervous system was trying to tell me, do not do this. I mean, uh-oh. My body literally said those words. I'm not making this up, right? It was so long ago.
Yeah, I believe it.
So a lot of my work is psychoeducation, where I think older therapists would just be like, so tell me, how do you feel? No,
Yeah.
that's not happening in my Zoom or my room. I really want to educate people. So if you understand the vagus nerve and you're like, oh, that is my body actually protecting me.
Never heard that before.
Yeah. Yeah. So I should have listened to that. And I wish I understood about coercive control. And when I was getting threatened and dominated to get married, to have children, I should have ran like hell. I mean, listen,
Mm.
I'm glad I didn't because I have two beautiful children and two grandchildren. So it all worked out. And I'm here today talking to you, but nobody needs to go through what I went through.
I know that's the hard part is like in life, I think maybe again, it's one of the qualities that we have is
Yeah.
that we can see the good in everything.
Yes.
So, I look back and I'm like, okay, I wouldn't be here where I am now, being able to help people if I hadn't gone through all the things that I've gone through. So, okay. And really, there's no other way to look at it,
Yeah.
Dr. Nay, because if you look at it any other way, you're in regret, you're in negativity, and you just
Yes.
you can't
Yeah.
live a good
Yeah.
life like that.
Yeah. And I always say to people, it's not toxic positivity, right? Listen, I don't want anybody
Never heard that either. Toxic positivity?
Yeah, meaning that like people just say, "Oh my God, everything happens for a reason." We're not saying that, right? We're saying that if you go through challenging things and you've worked on yourself, it does help to find meaning in them.
Ooh, I like that differentiation. That
Yeah.
really helps.
Yeah, yeah, because I don't, and maybe somebody listening to this might not be in that moment in their life, and that's okay. I wasn't always in that moment when I was going through it,
Yeah,
but I've made a choice to learn from these things because otherwise I'm just going to be a suffering fool and just like
totally.
blubbering my way through life. And I don't
Totally.
that.
So, okay, so here's a question. And I ask this of people all the time because I feel like it was contributory to the things that I had to deal with health-wise. You, at some point after this, because I feel like you and Jordan were done around 30 and somewhere
Yeah.
around 39, you were
Yes.
dealing with cancer.
Yes, I was. Yes.
So, share with everybody the cancer story. And then I would love to know if you think that this was just your nervous system, just basically,
Yeah.
forgive my crassness, shitting the bed after such trauma for so long.
Yeah, well, I think it's a beautiful, wonderful question. So I'll just back up a little bit. This is interesting. So when I finally did get Jordan to go to rehab, what triggered me to do it was I went to a drug counselor with him. And then the next day he didn't show up. And the drug counselor looked at me and said, "If you don't leave this man, you're going to get cancer."
Oh, I have chills.
That woke me up. And that's when I made him go to rehab. And that's when the whole physical thing happened. But he did go to rehab. That's now 10 years later, I did get breast cancer and skin cancer. And I do believe that I was in so much relational trauma and my stress response was chronically activated. And
Hmm.
it's really led to elevated cortisol, right, and other stress hormones. And that suppressed my immune function.
Hmm.
I know that combined with I had very low vitamin D. My vitamin D was 22. I
Most
also
people who have cancer do have low vitamin D.
Yeah, I also know I have the MTHFR. I have one allele. I have instead of two, and that's I don't methylate toxins well, right? So I think that yeah, there was a perfect storm of that, but I am sure that that relational trauma led to inflammation and, insane cortisol levels that really affected my immune system.
Wow. So, what was that journey like? Did you get both of them? Well, explain to everybody how you got.
Yeah, so I was 39 and I was going to a really great gyno in Beverly Hills. And after my mom had died of cancer at 52 from smoking, I said I always want to do sonograms of my breasts and ovaries. And he's like, okay,
A
take
sonogram?
yeah, that's how I
Never
found
heard of a sonogram. What do you
yeah.
mean? Not an ultrasound?
Ultrasound. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Oh, okay, got
Yes,
it. I'm
that's
like,
what.
wait, is this something new?
No, 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 an ultrasound. And so
Okay.
we always did it. And then he said, you know what? You have a small lump here. He said, come back in 3 months. He goes, it's a fibroadenoma. But it was bugging me. It was bugging me. So I went to St. John's Breast Center and they did a biopsy. And sure enough, the cancer was hidden in the fibroadenoma. And so this was a long time ago. This was 18 years ago, I guess. And I had a 37-year-old surgeon. And I said, I want to get a double mastectomy. And she said, well, the tumor board thinks you're crazy. You have a 3 millimeter, very unaggressive cancer, which is rare for young women. So I was very
Yeah.
lucky. And I said, I don't care what they think. I said, I want to do it. And I did it. And it went fine. I didn't have any infection. My healing went fine. I mean, of course, it was beyond traumatizing because then, like 6 months later, I had a basal cell. So I think my body was just like really detoxifying finally from all of this.
Yeah.
I had HPV too, which I think affected my immune system, right? So, because that's a chronic virus. So there were a lot of things that were happening in my system because of this relationship. And,
Yeah. Of
and my own body too, right? I'm not blaming the relationship, of course, for all of it.
course.
But it was very, very scary time,
Yeah.
as you know,
Did you
and
have to do chemo?
I didn't.
Okay.
No, I didn't.
Got it.
I chose to do something, aggressive, which they thought I was crazy to do that. But no, I didn't. But I was forever, I mean, I was totally traumatized by it. Luckily, I've always been in therapy. And then I turned a lot to spirituality at that time.
Yeah. I ask that because I think it's important for people listening to realize that this isn't just something you have to deal with mentally or emotionally, that it really becomes a physical thing too. I know that, in different scenarios in my life, all that toxicity, all that gaslighting, all that abusive stuff
Right.
was a perfect storm with other things that came together that helped create a lot of the issues that I've had. And I like to share that again in the hopes that that
Yeah.
might accelerate somebody from exiting a bad relationship, whether it's work, family, whatever it is.
Whatever it is. Right. Don't allow it to become chronic. And now I take really good care of myself. I do the sauna 4 days a week because I don't detoxify, so I have to sweat. I do, a lot of different vitamin IVs. So I'm always doing progressive things to take care of myself because I have to, because that's just my genetic makeup,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow. All right, Hill Squad, we are going to pause right here, but don't miss tomorrow because Dr. Nay will be back to share practical steps for breaking free from toxic love and trauma bonded relationships. I know this isn't easy, so please remember if you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, you are not alone. Help is available. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline or text START START to 88788. That's 88788 anytime. And we've included more resources in the show notes. Okay, friends, in the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present. Hey, Heal Squad. We have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or mariamenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.